So veteran Intercessors are a new fancy elites datasheet for Codex Space Marines, but do these guys really have a point compared with the other options? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics for another Space Marine Tactics video, where today we're focusing on the veteran Intercessors. Now these guys first appeared as an in-game option in the Vigilus expansions. You had to pay a command point per squad to give them an extra attack, and it was always a bit of an interesting proposition when you were paying command points as part of army construction. Now that's changed though, they're just a standard datasheet in Codex Space Marines, and it's interesting to have the option to upgrade standard Intercessors into more hitty ones if you want to. Let's take a look over its datasheet, talk about their pros and cons versus the standard Intercessors, and how well they compete in some various battlefield roles. So veteran Intercessors are an elite choice for Codex Space Marines, and rather than paying command points for them now, they're now just 22 points a model. The datasheet and the unit options are very wordy, but really their options boil down to them being either essentially regular Intercessors or Assault Intercessors with +1 attack and +1 leadership. Aside from that they're fairly similar, their core Primaris infantry. Their only other quirk is that they get the Wolfguard keyword if they're Space Wolves, but I believe that in the new codex that doesn't really have all that much synergy with many things. Unless I'm mistaken, I think that the only thing that they can gain from that keyword is being fearless when they're next to Logan Grimnar. Not bad to have, but very very niche. So basically you're taking 5 to 10 guys, either with one of the bolt rifle variants or with an Astartes chainsword and heavy bolt pistol. Sadly you can't mix and match, so you're going to need to decide if you want the choppy squad or the shooty squad. Finally, the sergeant has a decent amount of options. He can take plasma pistols and hand flamers, which I'm less interested in, but more importantly he can take a power sword, power fist or thunderhammer. Now this sergeant is essentially hitting like a mini character. He's got a whopping 4 attacks or 5 with shock assault, and I think for me I'd usually want to take either the power fist or the thunderhammer. Out of the two I think the power fist gives you more bang for your buck. The thunderhammer is definitely a luxury option if you just want to cram every last bit of fightiness into one squad. So how do these stack up against regular Intercessors then? Obviously the biggest draw is that +1 attack, better in the fight phase, and it can have additional value if you're thinking of using any melee stratagems on them, or if you're playing as a melee chapter that's got some additional melee buffs such as Blood Angels or Space Wolves. They're certainly going to be more viable in those chapters. They also get +1 leadership as well, usually fairly trivial, just every so often it might save you a Space Marine though, since they do have a slight chance to lose a model now and they shall know no fear got nerfed. I'd say perhaps the main incentive to take them is getting more melee power on few bodies. This doesn't always matter all that much, but if space is limited such as in a transport, then it could be a good idea. However, all of this isn't without its downsides though. These guys are 2 points over the standard Intercessors or 3 points over Assault Intercessors. It's kind of annoying that they're a bit more pricey when they take the chainswords, as of course that's the exact loadout that you'd most want to see combat with. 5 attacks at AP-1 is a lot scarier than 4 attacks at AP-0, though it's perhaps probably best that they did it this way, seeing as it means that one isn't just the obvious choice over the other. You've either got the choice between a shooty, melee and fighty unit, or one that's really geared for melee and is just very good at it. Besides points, they do pay by losing OBSEC, which is really quite a big deal in 9th, particularly in the battlefield role that they'd want to be filling, which is usually jumping into the midfield or piling out of transport vehicles to get to grips with the enemy. OBSEC could be very useful to opportunistically snag objectives. It's also a shame that they lose the Honour the Chapter stratagem that the Assault Intercessors get. They get to fight twice for 2 command points if it makes sense to, but the veteran Intercessors aren't able to do that. If they are equipped with bolt rifles, they are allowed to use rapid fire though, so you can still shoot them twice. Finally, being elites not troops is probably a slight disadvantage. Troop slots tend to be very very easy to come with and help fill out things like patrols or battalions, and they are competing against quite a lot of other good elites in the Space Marine army. Essentially, compared with the troopers' choices, you make them around about 30% more efficient in melee, and point for point make them around about 12% worse at durability and range damage output, and that could be a fairly reasonable trade-off depending on exactly what they're planning on doing in-game. So in terms of battlefield roles, these guys clearly aren't going to be competing with Intercessors for any sort of backfield camping roles. To make use of their extra melee power they need to be pushing forward. If they're foot slogging, I could see them being an attractive option to melee-focused chapters. Say if you were playing Blood Angels and Space Wolves and you wanted some shooty Intercessors in the gun line, it might make sense to upgrade to these guys, as it turns your gun line into something that the opponent really might not want to get too close to for fear of getting their teeth kicked in by a bunch of angry Space Marines. Could well be worth the extra couple of points per model. Losing OBSEC in that particular role though would be a big blow. If you're putting them in an Impulsor, then I think that 5 veteran Intercessors with a character could be an interesting choice. Space is limited, so you might as well fill it with the most violent Space Marines that you can find. though the only issue with that is that they'll be competing against Blade Guard for that same role, who are perhaps just a little bit more of a threat to absolutely everything with those high AP power swords that will cut through heavy armour as well. These guys are good, but they'll only really be able to get through light and medium infantry, and they're going to struggle quite a lot against anything heavier than that. Finally, you could think about using them in strategic reserve, or maybe using a stratagem to deep strike them, such as Deathwatch or Raven Guard have. In general, I could see them being potentially superior to standard intercessors for that role. It kind of makes sense to have fighter units getting close with a good delivery system. But again, there are tons of units in the Space Marine arsenal that might do this very well, and you just might be better off with something a bit more dangerous, whether it's aggressors or assault centurions, jumping in, hosing with bolt fire, then charging in with power fists, or maybe even something like Hellblasters or Eradicators coming out of reserve. I think that the main problem with the veteran intercessors is that they just have so much competition within the Space Marine Codex, and there's just a lot of other units that you could potentially use to fill their same role. Of course, we have the troops options that we've already discussed in detail, and Blade Guard veterans for foot slogging or transport melee troops. Vanguard veterans are also a very solid option indeed. You can take them for 21 points with a jump pack, and they can take 2 Astartes chainswords for free as well, so you're getting a faster unit with the same amount of attacks, though admittedly you do lose the heavy bolt pistol. Terminators also do their role of mixed melee and shooter units really quite well, and also come with the advantage of having innate deep strike built in if they need it. So overall, I'd say that veteran intercessors aren't likely to make it into too many competitive Space Marine lists, though I wouldn't say it's because they're a bad unit, I'd just say it's because there's so many units that marginally outcompete them. Slightly depressingly, they might fall into the same sort of remit as Reavers, filling a very slightly different tactical role to the troops intercessor choices, but never being taken just because they aren't troops and they don't have OBSEC. Still though, I think it's quite cool that they exist, and I like the way that they seem pretty decently usable, even if they might be very slightly outclassed by other options in most of their battlefield roles. So let me know what you think of these guys down in the comments below. Could you see yourself running a small unit of these in an Impulsor, or maybe making a very fighty battle line to footslog up the board? I look forward to hearing your thoughts and opinions. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. We'll certainly keep the unit reviews coming for Space Marines over the next few weeks. And if you have been enjoying my videos, I'd just like to mention that the channel has a Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description. Making all of these videos does take a fair amount of time, and if you are watching regularly, then any support is massively appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages. They get to see new videos early each week, there's regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and you also get entered into the regular Auspex Tactics prize giveaway with a chance to win some really big model kits at the start of each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.